The late 80s and early 90s was a sad time for many gay men. There were a lot of people dying. I lost my two neighbors right next door with whom I was very close. My upstairs neighbor was a very hot guy who I kind of have had lusted after for years. Always fantasized having sex with him. But somehow it was a little too close, and maybe we both made that decision that maybe if things had gone awry, it wouldn't be too good to live right above or below one another after things had gone badly. So I guess we just never went that route. But I always had it in the back of my mind, and I'll never forget seeing him one day out on the street with a cane, looking like he was in his 70s or 80s, when in reality he was in his 30s or 40s. I'll never forget that day, because I felt so badly, because I really didn't know that he was sick. And that's the way it was. You know, some people were very private, some people you didn't see for months, and it was just naturally, maybe you didn't see them, and then you found out. One day when I was walking the dogs, I ran into a guy who was moving out of Bedford Street, and I said, "Where are you going?" He said, "Oh, I'm moving to Key West." And I said, "Why?" He said, "Why do you think? I'm going to die." And that just hit me like a brick. You know, you're going somewhere to die. A beautiful young man who I had seen on the streets for many years was going to, and he wasn't alone. There were many that did that. And I'll never forget his parting words to me were, "Eric, if I were you, I would never touch another man." And again, it was another brick. And it was just such I felt such a sadness, because I knew that I wasn't going to follow his advice. I was going to continue to be careful and prudent in what I did. But I felt so terrible that another young gay man would be giving me that advice. But it was a time when you would see people on the streets with the cancerous sores covering their faces with jackets. And you can imagine the pain they felt, having to go into stores, having to go into grocery stores, having to maybe get on planes, having to interact with people in the village. It was a terrible time. In fact, my ex, with whom I moved onto Grove Street, we had remained friends. We didn't see each other that often, but he was a wonderful, wonderful guy. And one day I called his mother. He had moved into an apartment in Hell's Kitchen with his mom. And I said, because I called her mom too, I said, "Hi, Mom, can I speak to George?" She said, "George is dead." I asked her, of course, what happened, and she said, I think her words were, "The AIDS." That's what she said, "the AIDS." And then I found out that it had also taken, within that year, it had taken two of his other brothers and a sister through intravenous drug use. And the next thing I knew, I was speaking at his funeral. And this was a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful guy. And to think that so many of those incredible human beings are lost. Who knows what plays would have been written, what paintings would have been painted, what buildings would have been designed. It's just incredible to think of what we lost with those hundreds of thousands of young men. Elections would have been changed. The directions of countries would have been different. It's incredible to think of all that.